Welcome to the, oops, thank you, Bevy, notification extravaganza. Okay, welcome to the Salesforce release notes preview. Um, this is the Salesforce winter release, our winter 25 release. So this is going to be a co-sponsored event with Salesforce admin group here in Portland, Oregon. I am Michael Montez, one of your two co-leaders, Allison Rouse, CS2 Marketing, also a co-leader stuck on a project right now, finishing up a couple things, so she will not be able to join us just yet, but she may jump in at the end, ideally, but we shall see. This is also a co-hosted event, and this time we are sharing hosting duties with none other than the nonprofit group here in Portland as well. One of my favorite teams include the likes of one Mr. Andrew Shanks and Rich as well, Rich and Evan, also co-hosting. So if you ever need nonprofit support, nonprofit help, nonprofit community, reach out to them. I believe they are happy to talk to you, just as we are happy to speak to you about anything admin related, or not. You can reach out to me for anything. I don't mind. I'm also using a new microphone, so if it gets too soft or it's too loud, just let me know in the comments and I will adjust accordingly, but so far so good as far as I can tell. All right, so let's get talking about Winter 25, the release. That is not a title, it's not called the release, but anyway, a couple things to note real quick on the release. These notes here, the ones that, these items that we've cherry picked, these are things that we think are going to be specific and most useful for the admins and the nonprofit sectors. There's a ton of stuff, obviously, in the, as you know, in the release notes that are very specific to specific industries. And so just, if you're a Service Cloud user, if you're even a Sales Cloud user, taking Sales Cloud out of the kind of admin space because it is a license now, or anyway, it's getting kind of specific, and it's not something actually that I leverage as much as I used to, Sales Cloud. So I'm not in it as much. It's hard for me to speak to it. So I've taken that out. But this stuff is kind of universal to all administrators, and you should have access to 90% of these things. There's a couple of beta things in here and a few things that need a license, but for the most part, this should be stuff that you can access right now, or as the release rolls out. So I just want to caveat that and say that it's not everything is in here. There's some stuff in there about Service Cloud Lightning and field service, CPQ, those kinds of things we just don't touch on. But there's a lot of updates for those items as well. So make sure you check the notes yourself. Let's talk about some dates, key dates, in fact. The big two are right there, red. Preview sandboxes are getting updated tomorrow around 5 o'clock Pacific, I think. So if you, most of the things that you are going to see here are not going to be available until tomorrow for you to play around with. So which is why we like to do this now, because give you access, give you some ideas about what's coming, and then you get in that sandbox and start messing around, seeing what's going on. And then the actual release schedule into production is not until the week before. It looks like, I can't tell. Is that Dreamforce? That is right before Dreamforce and then well after Dreamforce. So the 6th of September and then the 4th of October is the second release window weekend. So check your status.salesforce.com for your org's specific release window. So just keep a note of those things. And then you can see in there as well, there's going to be, all the hoopla around the release notes from the Salesforce teams, the Salesforce Live, and all those kinds of things as well. So keep your eyes peeled for those. This is a preview of that, essentially. This is they look at our stuff and then they write down how to do it. They just copy us. So that's to know. Another thing to note that I think a lot of people don't do, and I'm guilty of this as well, is there is a section in the back end in the setup called release updates. These are things that have to be turned on specifically within Salesforce. They can be turned on early, or they can be turned on where they might have an impact on your system, so they actually let you roll it out yourself early, and then at some point they kind of become mandatory. And so what you want to do is you want to check out the release updates section to see what's coming, and then you can do your checks on, does this impact my org? How much does this impact my org? Do I have to change URLs or some other things? A lot of them, a lot of times are like URL based. Do I have to change URLs or other things before it becomes a mandatory turn on? The release updates that we all kind of went through was MFA. You were able to kind of turn on the release update um, early and do all your testing, and then when the time came to uh, go live with MFA, it was already, you guys already, everybody knew that their org was working or wasn't. So long before it became mandatory. So just check that section and you'll see a lot of the like mandatory updates coming soon, and then a chance to make adjustments. Okay, let's go over some of the general enhancements that are coming here. So if you don't know, or if you haven't been, there's been a lot of updates recently with kind of emails and org-wide emails and validating emails for users, for your users. There's a DKIM update that went live a couple last release that required you to either have a DKIM, what is it, record in your domain name, your DNS, or each individual user has to verify their email address through the system verifier. That is, go to the user record, look at their email address, and click verify. And now that feature, that function, that requirement is coming to the no reply org-wide email address. So you look at your org-wide email address, you can go in there, you have to verify the org-wide email address if you don't have DKIM authentication set up with your DNS. So be aware of that. If emails start to not work, this is what happened to us. Emails stopped going out. All of our chatter notifications and some of our inline emails, people, I didn't get a win notification, and we won the deal. What happened? And we looked in the back end, everything was functioning as normal, but this update went live during the summer and spring or summer, and we had to figure it out. So we kind of scrambled to get our DKIM set up correctly, but it was done and it's working now. But just make sure that you're checking those now. This is no reply org-wide is going to do that similar verification. And along with that, if I have in bold on the last line here, if your IT org has basically wide open access to the internet, this really doesn't apply. However, there are plenty of orgs that have IP restrictions and other things. There's the setup, Salesforce setup, when you go to setup in the org, is actually going to be hosted under a different domain or subdomain. So you may have to add that domain or subdomain to your security exemptions through your IT team. So just know that that's coming as well. It's just again another one of these like multiple security things that are coming soon. I think it's related to some of these cookie policies, but I can't say for sure. That's cookie policies on the browser and people like Google, stuff like that, if you follow that craziness. Okay, what about the analytics updates? Let's take a look. This is a beta. So again, when this hits the orgs tomorrow, it'll be in beta. So you definitely want to play with this, but this is a big one that kind of like, if you talk about points retired, things like that. The ability for you to adjust to how you build custom report types in the setup section is being fully revamped. So essentially, you can see there that you're going to have the ability to kind of do searches and find the report types in a much easier way, much like how all the other user settings and permission settings are now set up. We have the search, the find, the filter, things like that, create lists, etc. But now when you're actually building your custom report types, types, you can actually add a lot more fields. You can add up to 1,000 fields in the report type layout using the lookups. How it's all organized has completely been revamped. So if there are people out there who do a lot of report type adjustments and just I think we've all been through the frustration of dragging a field from the fields column into the kind of ad hoc, I don't know what that was, report builder section where you add the field in there, and it like you have to like shake it and give it the little shimmy, and then it has to like turn blue and whatever. This is all that's all been clean is being cleaned up. It has been cleaned up. So it's a beta release, meaning that it's not generally available, and I believe you have to or there's a beta section, then you can turn that on. So give it a shot, give it a try. It should make things a lot easier for us all going forward. Okay, customizations. Yes, finally on the custom report types. The whole backend is getting a lot of love. The whole setup section is getting a lot of love, and I think we talked about this in another meeting. But at Trailhead DX and at Dreamforce last year, they were talking about how they basically went in to change one thing, and they found out they basically had to tear down the entire backend system and rebuild it. Every setup page was like a unique snowflake, and so they're trying to standardize that. These are the results of those standardizations. This is a continuation of the previous adjustments that have been coming to the user permissions. Now, when you go into a user record, you can kind of see what is this here? Visibility into like the profiles and the permission sets that are granted to that user. So again, this is that cleanup of the backend system where if I go to a user record, I can go onto the permissions tab, user permissions tab, and I can see the permissions they have, and then I can see how they were given that access. So if they have access to, edit reports, it'll show me this permission set gives them that access. Also, this permission set in this profile give them access to do these things. So it makes it a lot easier to see how things are granted to a user, whether that's through a profile, permission set, permission and or permission set group, something else. Like, there's like 1,000 ways to do some of these things. So it's painful to find it. This makes it a lot easier to kind of go to the source and then find the solution that you're trying to find. So yeah, all these changes have been really helpful. So if you want to reach out to Cheryl on LinkedIn and say thank you, she will appreciate it, I'm sure. And then that's on the user side, right? Guys in permission sets. Now on the object, now we talk about object cleanup, object setups. Now, if you go to the object itself, you can kind of see how object access is granted. So I can't see my slide. Let me see. I was reading it the other day. Oh, that's really small. Sorry about that. The slides will go out at the end as well. But you can kind of see the, it's showing CRUD access, create, update, create, edit, etc. And then you can see kind of what's granting that access. So in the example there, we see that it's being granted through permission sets and certain users. So again, you can go to an object and see how is it being accessed through what permission set, through what is giving access from this object to these various profiles or permission sets. Okay. If anybody has any questions on these and they want to, or if they have any thoughts on them themselves, please feel free to jump in and just kind of share on that. Because right now it's preview, right? Not until tomorrow do I able to play with these things. But so if anybody has any thoughts on these things, just please feel free.
Are they still targeting kind of like sometime in 2025 to switch from profiles to permission sets?
So that has been, they had said that grand, what is the word? I'll call it an accusation. That grand declaration, that grand declaration is off the table. They're not going to hard put a date on when they officially move or, officially move to that. That will probably, my guess is it'll probably come back at some point and say, okay, we're now officially ready to put a cutoff in. But right now the cutoff has been lifted. There is no like hard date where they are going to say you need to come off of profiles. But they're not going to. I think it's like all other things they do. They're not going to improve profiles. They're not going to make it easier for certain things, but they need to get parity with how permissions are granted, viewed, and accessed before they could really make that change. And I think it just became a much bigger project than they really thought it was going to be. All right. Okay. Users. So on your user object, I think we've all experienced this as well, right? You go to a user, you look at a user, and you have to go into the user record to make a change to the user record, to that user record. Go in there, hit edit, make the change, come back out. Again, setup is being normalized, unified. Now on the user record, if you're looking at a user list view, you can actually make edits to the user record itself from within that within that list view. So inline editing of the user object as well. So huge benefit. And that one, I think you also all of these things, not all of them, a lot of things have to be enabled in that setup section that I talked about earlier. The what did I call it, or what's it called? The setup section that we talked about earlier. Anyway, go check those out because you have to. Some of them you have to enable them. Also, the white text in these slides will have links to the actual page that the release note exists on. So when I send out the PDF afterwards, you can just click on the link and go to that for more details on how to enable it if you need to. Okay. This is a good one. The Lightning record pages, right? Dynamic pages, I think we call them, and other dynamic highlights. If you don't know, there's a section called Dynamic Highlights panel. And in that panel is where the compact layout would live. Compact layout is accessible through from the object level, and you would have to define a compact layout, put the fields you want into that compact layout, and then you assign that compact layout much like you would assign page layouts to your record types. Now, coming soon, you will actually be able to define this compact layout. I'm making air quotes because it's no longer a compact layout. You actually define the fields in this compact layout within the actual Lightning page itself. So it's tied directly to the Lightning page. You don't have to go outside the Lightning page to make this change. And it's dynamic as well. So you can have, I think it says there how many fields you can have, 12 fields. You can have 12 fields, and those fields can be dynamically displayed based on criteria within the record. So you don't have to build, you could say if the amount, if the deal, I always go to opportunities because this is where I started. If the opportunity is close one, then show a project number field and a project manager field, a proposal manager field. But if the stage value is not one, it's in process, then show the sales rep's name and the total amount that the project is estimated to be. And those are dynamic. You can show those fields dynamically. So this is basically replacing compact layouts. So just know that that's coming. And again, it's a lot more robust, and it's a lot more similar to how the Lightning page works currently, which you can have dynamic fields and you can do read-onlys and edits and certain things, and then show hide. So that's coming tomorrow, ideally. So get in there and definitely want to start messing with that. I can't wait to get in there and start killing all my compact layouts and getting some of these adjustments made because they're going to be very, very much more useful, much more easy to manage. Yeah. And then conditional formatting is another release. Again, same thing on the Lightning page. This goes for the entire page now. Any field that you've got in there, you can actually do custom formatting based on criteria. So if you want to you want to add an icon to the front of the result. If it's a certain value, you can see the example there. You can add icons. You can change the color. So you can have your red, yellow, blues from before, from the good old days, but now you can actually do it on the field, on the Lightning page, and define it right there within the Lightning page, how I want the values to display based on the criteria that is within the value that I'm looking at. So again, very exciting, very much easier to maintain. So much easier to maintain these types of changes with the pages. So a lot of love for that, for those. Okay, any developers out there? I got one thing here that caught my eye, that caught our eye, and we wanted to share. As an admin, you probably have to build a sandbox or refresh a sandbox. Well, coming soon in the release updates section again, you have to, this is all about security, you will have to define a public group with users, and then those users will be the users who have access to sandboxes when they get built or refreshed. So um, let's say you've got this public group called Sandbox Developers, and you put your five development team members in there. Whenever you do a refresh, you have to specify that the Sandbox Developers public group are the group of people who can access the sandbox, and anybody else outside that group could not access the sandbox. So that would mean um, your users, anybody who's not in that group, they couldn't. If you had SSO as an example, here's the example I was thinking of. If you have SSO, we have SSO for all of our pieces, um, and single sign-on. So if I go to if I am given a URL and I go to that URL, I could log in with SSO because my SSO provider has me in there as accessible to Salesforce. So if I'm not in that public group for that sandbox, but I do have SSO, I wouldn't be able to access this particular sandbox because I have permission through the SSO, but I don't have permission through the public group because this particular sandbox has not been granted access to a public group that I'm a member of. That makes sense. I hope I didn't screw that up, but it's a security thing. So sandboxes will need to have public groups of users defined who can act. Those are the users that can access those particular sandboxes. So just know that it's coming. You may notice it as you start to refresh or launch new sandboxes.
Does that seem like that's going to make it easier or harder to grant ad hoc access to a sandbox? Let's say that we've built out a feature and the customer support team says, hey, we want to test out that functionality before you push it into production. Is this going to make it easier or harder? Because it's already kind of hard to get folks into a sandbox. Just wondering which direction this is going to go.
Yes. I mean, it'll definitely make it more secure. So
Yeah.
whenever it's more secure, my vision is it makes it harder, right?
Mhm.
There's an extra step in there where the user has to you have to put the user into a public group and then grant that group access to this, or the sandbox, tell that sandbox, this is my group of people that are going to access the sandbox type. So.
Yeah.
Well,
Go
ahead.
My hope was that somehow it would, because in the production environment, we've gone through, all these security measures to make sure everybody in our production environment is supposed to be there. If by granting these this sandbox access in production, I was hoping that, okay, well, we've granted it in production and now you're a part of this group. Therefore, it'll be easier for us to reset your password and, whatever to get you in the sandbox. But I wonder if you still have to jump through the hoops of now you're in the public group to get into the sandbox, but you still have to verify your email address and set up your MFA for the sandbox and all of the above and more. Just, we'll see, I guess, is the answer.
Yeah. And I think Keith is going to jump to this as well, but I just wanted to say that in a previous release, sandboxes were open to system administrators became open. So they, how they would append an invalid.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a system administrator, your email would not be appended with the .invalid on a sandbox refresh.
Right.
And I think this is similar in that you're not going to have to jump through as many hoops to get the users in that public group access to the sandbox. But I don't know for sure. And Keith, do you have something?
We'll see.
Yeah, Michael, I had a question. So do you know, is that public group, is that defined on the sandbox or is it in the production instance?
In production.
Okay.
Yeah. Because when you do the refresh, you pick the sandbox. You pick the public group.
Okay. So you could have one group and give access to
pre-build
multiple sandboxes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
Christina is saying that there's additional information about the freezing and the unfreezing of users for those types of sandboxes. So this public group thing is going to be helpful, but it's going to be just know it's there, because the first time you do it is, always happens, right? The first time we do it, nothing works as we expected it, and not panic, but like frustration. So I wanted to make you all aware of that. But yeah. Okay, we'll find out tomorrow, I guess, right? So everybody refresh your sandbox tomorrow and see how it reacts to you. Go get your UAT full dev sandbox and full access sandbox and see what happens. All right, let's get down to the stuff this is where I live, spend most of my day, and I think a lot of people are really getting in that space. This is the flow section. Um, there's a new component called an action button. It basically allows you to, in a screen flow, you can call an action, which is defined here as a auto launch flow. That action or that auto launch flow will run and then display the results of whatever the auto launch flow does. I have an example here. I'll go walk through it here in just a second. So the example as it is here is that you create a new auto launch flow that gets contacts from an account ID. Okay, so you build that separately. You build an auto launch flow that gets contacts from an account ID and puts them in a collection. Then in your screen flow, you're going to have your normal screen flow, and you're going to add this action button component, and you're going to point it to your auto launch flow that gets contacts from an account ID. And you're going to pass over your account ID value from your screen flow. What the user sees on the front end is they would go through the flow, they'd enter an account, and then they'd see a button there that says get contacts. That's your action button. They click on that get contacts, and then that subflow essentially goes out, does its thing, gets the contacts from the account ID that you gave it. And in this case, you've told it to display the results in a table. That's where the items are selectable. The user can then go through and select multiple users and continue on with the screen flow. So they could be something like, I'm going to change the zip code or whatever, send an email, hopefully not, but something along those lines where you're going to do that. So it's kind of like a subflow, but it's not, because the subflow actually goes out and to a separate thing and requires you to do something. This is actually just saying I've built a bunch of sub elements within my flow, and I need those things to be called, and they're reusable. So that's my take on that. That's what I understand that. Christina has an example here that the user wants to create a request to review a document, but they want to include the details of the customer plus who is assigned to the account, sales reps. But they don't want to have to click away to look that up. So they hit the button and the customer details are displayed in data table 1. Plus all the people assigned to the account are displayed in data table 2. So yeah, exactly. It's going to go do something and then display it, show it for you, and then you can do something either with the data or do nothing at all. But yeah, it's just more helpful. It just allows to make your screen flows more useful. And it gives a better user experience, Let's see. Another example I can think of at the top of my head is if I have an opportunity and it's a renewal opportunity. Let's say I've got a renewal opportunity and I just want to say, well, show me, click the action button, and it pulls in all the other renewals that are currently active, because maybe we're looking for a series of start dates, and we want to try to find that hole in the calendar that we can put our project start date into. I don't know, project team. That's a terrible example, but I made it up, so it doesn't matter. So does anybody else have any thoughts on this, if just based on what we're seeing here about the action button? It's interesting and exciting at the same time. So we'll see how it works. I'm sure that it's going to be very, very useful. All right. And Christina, maybe you can share with us later your action button flow. Yeah, okay, good. All right. Okay. Another flow piece of magic is everybody knows the update record, not action, element. Well, now that particular element has the ability to not only create records, but update as well. So it's almost like an upsert. If you do a create and you give the create action a collection of records that happen to also have an ID or something, you can see here that it in the screen capture there, it will say, oh, do you want me to create, update, or what is it? Yeah, I'm going to create these records in this collection. I can also update them if you have an ID. Yeah, it's upsert, right? They're doing an upsert. So if you have an ID in your collection, then again, you're going to change all the statuses of these contacts to something else. Or for those contacts that don't exist, you're going to create new records. So it'll find the ID if it's in your collection, and then update the ones with it where there is an ID, and create the rest from nothing. So you have to give it the values. But this, again, in a screen flow or in a collection, in a flow where you have a collection, you can collect all the data from the user, have them do a manual input, and then build the records or update the records if they already exist. So it just makes that create section, that create element, a little more powerful, and it prevents you or helps you not have to do both things, right? Like, I need to separate this. I've got a collection with all these records, and I need to separate them out to the new records and the update records. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just kind of do it from the one step. Okay, let's see. I saw a note. Let's see. All right. Oh yeah, this one is also awesome. Hey, remember when you wanted to send an email from Flow and you used the send email action, and then you had 15 people that wanted to get an email, and you went and you fired it off, and it failed, and you're like, what the hell's going on? Everything worked. This is perfectly normal. This looks great. And then it said, oh, you can only have 5 recipients in your email. And you're like, well, that's ridiculous, because the whole company, of course, wants to know when something's won. And then you went and you created a whole distribution list in your IT team, and you had to work with them for 4 or 5 hours just to get a distribution list set up and all the requirements that go around that. Well, now you can actually can add 150 users to your email send, and you can BCC and CC users as well. So I have an example of that. When I have an email and the deal's close 1, we send an email to 3 people, and then we CC the distribution list of a certain sub department, or BCC the contracts team, just to let them know those things are coming down. So that's what this is all about. So not only does it just boost the number of email addresses you can have in your CSV or in your file there, from 5 to 150, but it also allows you to do BCC and CC, which you could not do before, which seems odd, but is now fixed. So that's exciting. Don't overdo that, please. Don't be sending too much email from Salesforce. It's not great at that. Okay, Andrew, time for you.
All right. I don't think I'm able to share my screen, so I don't know if there's a setting you have to click for me.
When I stop sharing, I think you might get the access. Let me see. But yeah, go for this first and I'll.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about Einstein for Flow, which is currently in beta, but one of the updates coming for Winter 25 is a kind of continuous, or a way to edit without having to basically create a brand new flow. So as I'll show, you're able to kind of type in a prompt and say, hey, this is the type of flow that I want, and then it will create it. And currently, it'll allow you to kind of start over. So just like launch a new tab, have to retype the prompt or do whatever else. This new method allows you to basically just kind of edit it and then restart from the same page and not have to copy and paste what you already wrote. So it'll kind of help make things move a little bit faster or work quicker, hopefully. But yeah, I was going to show what Einstein for Flow looks like for any of those who haven't seen it, since it's currently in beta. And if it's something that you already has, you can definitely opt into the beta currently. So it'd be worth checking out, I think.
All right, let's try this. Let me stop sharing, and then you should be able to share at the bottom.
Oh, yep, there it is. All right, so from your flow page, you would just pick a new flow. And if you have it enabled, you'll see this kind of let Einstein help you build a flow option. Otherwise, you just see kind of your normal 2 options.
We do not see a pop-up. Did a pop-up come up? We're
Balls.
just seeing
Yeah.
the little squirrel there.
All right, you try again.
Can you get rid of the little squirrel and that panel up there?
What? You don't like the squirrel? Squirrel's awesome, man.
Real estate, man.
All right.
You don't love the big, tall headers that take up tons of screen space?
Yeah, true. It'd be nice if it did have a collapsible option. All right, let's see. There we go.
There we go. That's working.
All right. So you have your let Einstein help you build, and then we'll select that. And you have your kind of nice instruction area. If you need some sample prompts, it gives you some options, which is great because this is how Einstein bot was trained. So I want to create a flow that All right, so you just kind of give a nice simple prompt, kind of get the ball rolling. Hit create a draft flow, and then you wait while the magic happens, and it's sending a bunch of data back and forth. It does work, I promise. Just have to wait. Yeah, this is something I've actually been working on and helping train the model, basically. So trying to teach the Einstein model how to make a flow is a project I've been fortunate enough to kind of been working on for the past, 10 or 11 months at this point. So it's been a fun experience. So you'll see this pop up where it has my prompt. So the new addition will be edit instead of start over. So if I hit start over, it would just pump out a new one. And then it will give my entry criteria. So stage name equals close one, only when it's set to meet that criteria. And then it has the email action already all set up. It has an email body setting to the owner ID's email, and then has email subject, which you can go and check those as well. And it'll have a message all typed up for you. So hello, first name, opportunity with the record ID titled this is now closed. And then you can reopen it if you need to. And then it has the subject that should be case. So it's still not batting 100%, but it's majority of the way there. So just say opportunity is now closed. And that would just go out to said person.
So in this example, where you've asked it for, I think you specifically said is closed one. If you were to give it a value, a field like where is one equals true, would it also, like if you were to edit it and say is one equals, if you were given a very specific API name, does it just understand that as well? Or is it parsing your language by saying close stage equals?
It's probably going to work better in more like layman terms, just because that's how we've trained it. I'm not saying that it wouldn't work if you did is closed one, but if it doesn't work one way, try it the other.
That's fair. I was the first time I've actually seen that in action that way. It looks a lot more helpful than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's still, it's still in beta right now. It's mostly trained on semi-simpler things, but if it's coming with kind of, I think, an edit function. I forget when that's releasing. Maybe not winter, but the one after, to where you can then add on additional things after the first prompt. So you would continue with like a new prompt. So like it's evolving the flow to add additional things, because it's not currently set up to say, hey, I want this thing plus this other thing plus this node, and handle like 10 different elements at one go. It's not necessarily currently set up to do that. So it'd be more of a like step-by-step, hey, let's start with this. Let's add this other thing. Now let's add a decision. On this part of the decision, let's add this thing. So you can kind of just talk it through the process, which is, super helpful and can be potentially quicker or just easier access to the function if you're not very skilled at building out flows initially.
That is very helpful. That is very cool. That'd be looking forward to. So this, and again, that is a feature that you have to have. Is it an Einstein license? I don't forget what it's
Yeah,
called.
it's an Einstein 1, I think, SKU or license. So it would come with like the Copilot and other things. So you would probably know if you have it. And then you would just activate this on the back end to kind of get into the beta. Yes, Sally. Dollar bill, y'all.
Takes money to make money, right? So very cool.
Awesome.
Nice. All right.
But yeah, happy to answer any questions kind of about that, since it is a project I've been working on for a while.
All right. Okay, and then so the last thing here is, these are all the other things. We didn't build slides for all of these, but here are all the other things that we feel are pertinent to admins in the nonprofits team users. So they're all there with links. You can see those. And that is it for now. Questions, comments, concerns, stuff you want to see. Again, it's kind of released tomorrow. Your sandboxes should get updated tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon, 5 o'clock-ish. Yeah. Anybody have any questions or thoughts? Oh yeah, Christine, you want to share? Do you mind if I record it, or can I?
Yeah,
stop
go
recording?
right ahead. I already
Okay.
set the customer's name as example customer. So
Okay, let me
should
stop
be
sharing
fine.
here.
All right, now there we go. Screen share. Entire screen. That should be fine. Share. I think. Oh, maybe you have to click it. There we go. Okay. Let's jump into this one. Okay. So I made myself little notes on the chance that I wasn't going to be able to narrate, but it's pretty simple. Basically, you're going to create a very simple kind of like get subflow of something you can pass in a variable into. In this case, we needed both customer information as well as what we call rep assignments. So we have one table that's going to display the customer information, one table that's going to display all the assignments that go with that. And then to call it up, now my screen's going to go blank. There we go. To call it up, we have a screen that the users interact with. They put in the customer's information here, like they select one from the system. But there's going to be like key information they have to consider, and then the actual people that they want to apply to the record, because they're going to have to pick some people and enter those in as a later step, and they don't want to have to click back and forth to figure out who that is. So the way that this works is we have this new fancy action button. There's our action button from beta, and you're going to call up this very simple flow from earlier, and we pass in that variable, just the one item for our customer record ID. And that's really all that we need to do to make the action button work. The magic then comes in with the data tables that we display. These call up the results from the action button. So it actually calls up that flow, and then the collection, which is kind of the key here. You have to store the results of your get in a record collection. That way it can be retrieved and brought back over here. So now that I've got that, here's kind of how it works. So I've selected my example customer. We're going to just enter some random information here, but the magic is really just down here at this button that says retrieve customer details. Now I used, I think it's called style overwrite with CSE or with a CSS text template in my flow, so I could customize what this neutral button looks like. So it calls a little bit more attention to it because I want people to hit that button. And so now this brings back the pertinent information from the customer so they don't have to hunt around on the record. And it also says who the rep is that's assigned by brand, by territory, and whether they're a sales rep or an account rep, so that we know who the supporting people are. That way, when they get to here and they go, I'm a staff member and I want to then add my sales reps over here, it's really easy to be like, oh, Caitlin, or oh, Dan, or whoever it is, and I can just add them quickly here and then proceed on. So that's our use case. We're doing this on this flow as well as another one. And I think we're going to find it very helpful to not have to have users click away to a different screen.
Very nice.
Questions? Awesome.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing. That is helpful. Yeah. Is that, so that is beta action button, or is that something you had?
So it's action button. In our sandbox, it's still labeled as beta, but I'm sure that that's going to be quickly removed probably tomorrow, like the little beta part of it. I'm sure it's just going to be GA at that point.
Very nice. Very cool. All right. Thank you for sharing. That's really helpful. I'm going to play around with this action button as well. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, Bobby's suggesting that there's also a subreddit for Salesforce release note. Is it a subreddit for release notes or a Salesforce subreddit?
It's just the Salesforce subreddit, but right around release time, they do sort of like a quick version of all the notes. So it's nice to look through if you're somebody like me who sort of hates going through a wall of text.
Well, that's what this was for. You didn't have to.
Well, this too.
Right.
Yes, this too.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, if there's no questions, comments, or concerns, feedback is always welcome. I will get this recording out that you may share with the many. But yeah, thank you for joining us, and I really appreciate your time. And as always, we will be sending out additional items as they are ready for meeting and greeting. So thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.